The other thing is the food. There's nowhere you could do anything for yourself, and the food was mainly, it was always mutton, and it put my late husband off for the rest of his life ever eating lamb, and lamb is nice.
Right on the top was the mess hall, for the want of a better word, and I will tell you the thing, I will not eat pumpkin, because there, like even today, I don't eat pumpkin of any description. There we got pumpkin for breakfast, pumpkin for lunch, pumpkin for tea, and I now hate pumpkin. It was obviously cheap food,
I remember hating the food. I was a very picky eater, and my mother is actually a cook. She was a cook in a hotel, so she's an extremely good cook. So I was used to very tasty food, I guess, and even then I was a picky eater. So when we landed at Bonegilla Hostel, my mother's greatest concern was my eating. She was also I'd had tuberculosis, the beginnings of tuberculosis as a child as well, so she was very concerned that I eat well, and I just hated the food. So I think I was especially sympathetic to the children at Pennington School who didn't like the food at the hostel, because it brought back memories, my own memories of hating the food. I turned 6 in the hostel, so I was 5.5 when we arrived, and I had my 6th birthday at the hostel, and my mother wanted to make me a birthday cake, but there was no cooking in the Nissen huts. And so I remember my mother getting all of her friends to collect the milk coffee biscuits that were handed out in packs of 2 for afternoon tea in the dining hall, and the little pats of butter and the little envelopes of sugar and the sachets of coffee. So she collected them over quite a long time, and she fashioned in the Nissen hut, she fashioned a cake. She made a coffee cream with the butter and the sugar and the coffee, and then she dipped the biscuits in milk, and she built up a birthday cake. And it's one of my earliest, happiest memories of the hostel. Yeah, how she somehow managed to make me a birthday cake in those sorts of circumstances. Yeah. Often my classroom was the first port of call. They would come to school at Pennington School, and then go back to the hostel, to sleep and to live with their families. There were some interesting things. The food was a bit of an issue at first. Many of them tried very, very hard to adapt to Australian food. I remember asking them what food they liked, and they'd say, bread, we want bread and meat. But I remember a boy called Heng, I'll never forget him, who'd had a very difficult experience in Cambodia and had spent lots of time in Khao Dang in Thailand, in the refugee camp, and I just watched him getting thinner and thinner in front of my eyes, and he just could not eat, the food at the hostel. He said the sheep smelt bad, the boiled sheep, and he just loathed the food. He couldn't eat it. So I remember the very first time I ever cooked Asian food, I found it was a Vietnamese recipe actually for noodles and beef. And we booked in the kitchen at the school, and we used it as a language lesson, and we cooked noodles and beef. I mean, I hate to think how horrible it must have been, But he said it wasn't as good as the food in Khao Dang, but it was certainly a lot better than the food at the hostel, yeah. So that's a really strong memory. And another memory was of the children being teased about their food. A lot of it, eventually, when some of them went to houses, they would get housing trust houses, they'd bring food in that had garlic in it, and there was a bit of a problem in the school with kids being teased about their smelly food. And so I remember saying that my children could eat in the classroom, and then they'd go out and play after. But we tried very hard to protect them from we did other things too with the mainstream kids, but we tried very hard to protect them from being harassed by other children.